When working with Revit walls, we can do something called modify the return to the end of them. And this applies specifically to those sweeps and reveals that can be part of those wall units. I'm going to zoom in here to the brick soldier course up at the top of the wall. And we can see that it extends out in this direction, but it just stops right at the end of the wall. And I'd like it to wrap around the corner and come here to the outer edge. One other thing to know though, is right now, this shows up as being all gray at the end of the wall. In some conditions, maybe that's what we want to have, but the reality of it is we should probably be seeing those materials wrapping around the outside edge of the wall too. To get those materials to wrap around the outside edge, the first thing we need to do is select on the wall, then go to Edit Type underneath Properties, go to the Edit button next to the word Structure, then down here where it says Default Wrapping, change this from being Add-ins to Exterior. Now it's going to wrap all the exterior materials around the end. If we click on OK to that and then OK to that, we can now see that the brick is now wrapping around the end, as is the CMU block down below. Unfortunately though, the thing that's not wrapping is that sweep or that reveal that's showing up here. And in this case, it's a sweep. Well, one thing we can do is select on the wall, and there's an option that says Modify Returns. If we pick on Modify Returns off of the ribbon, we'll see that anything that's a sweep or a reveal is now highlighted in blue. And what it's trying to ask us is which one of these do you want to modify the return of? Which one do you want to have it wrap around the corner for? I want to point out that up here on the options bar, there's a return and the angle is going to be a 90-degree angle. If I specify a different angle here, it wouldn't turn it the full 90 degrees. It could just be a 45-degree angle or a 60-degree angle. But in this case, it is a 90-degree turn, so I'm going to leave it like that. So I'm going to highlight there and click. And we can see that it's now added a couple of extra bricks to the end. Well, if we hit Escape a couple times on the keyboard, we can now select back on the wall, and there's a little blue dot that shows up here. If you click and drag the blue dot out to where the end of the wall is at and then let go, it'll now wrap that material around to that point. Something else that I want to show is if I click on this upper corner right here, the view cube, we'll spin the wall around. In fact, now I want to click on the face of the view cube right here so we can see it from the back. If I zoom in here, there'll be a dot down here. If you click and drag on this dot, you'll notice that you can drag that back and you can get that to basically line up right there at the end. Now you might need to either measure it or just sort of eyeball it to get it exactly where you'd like it to be at. But if I zoom back out, maybe even clicking on the corner of the view cube here, we can now see that it does return right around the end. So one other thing that this will allow us to do is if we select back on here again, you'll notice these dots that come down the side. If I click on the dot, I can then pull it back and we can see that it's no longer cutting the material out all the way to the end. It's cutting it out to that spot that I pulled it back to. If I pull it forward, it'll cut the material out all the way to the end of the wall. The same thing applies down here. If I click on the dot and pull it all the way on out, we can see it now extends out past the end of the wall. So you can modify the returns by clicking here and then either pulling the dots backwards or forwards, or you can quite literally use the command modify the return, which is select on the wall, select on modify returns off of the list, pick the end you want to modify the return for as well as the angle, and then watch it turn itself around the corner at the angle that you specified.